So I'm a little bored right now. I don't really have anything to do other than all of my homework. So I'm going to make a multiplayer FPS game here. And to start this off, I'm going to make a new Unity project. And I'm going to call it just FPS game. Whatever. And in this project, we're going to be using a networking solution called Photon, which is great because it allows us to have up to 20 players at once playing our game networked together for free. And I've used this for my past few games, Road Match 1 and Road Match 2, and it works like a charm if you're a small indie developer just trying to make a game with zero budget. So to import it, I'm going to search PUN 2 on the asset store. PUN 2 free is the one we're going to be using. You don't really, the paid version doesn't give you much more. The paid version gives you like 100 players at the same time and a few more features, but it's really not necessary. I've only ever used the free version and I've never had any problems with it or anything I wasn't able to do. Alright, now that it's imported PUN, we're gonna need to set up an app ID for our game. So I'm gonna go in my web browser, I'm gonna go to photonengine.com, which is their website. I'm gonna sign in with my account. If you don't have an account, you can create one. It's free. Once I'm signed in, I'm going to go to my cloud applications. These are all the cloud applications I've made, and we're going to create a new application, and we're going to use Photon PUN. We're going to name it FPS tutorial game, and then we're going to create it. And now I'm going to look for it in this list. You won't have all these are my projects. And I'm going to copy this app ID. Don't share this with anyone or they can, have players connect to your game. This is what the app ID players will use to connect to your game exclusively. I'm going to paste that in here, set up my project. Alright, it generates a file for me, which is great. In server cloud settings, you can expand this. Usually I set the fixed region as USW, which means that players will only be able to connect to the United States West Photon Relay server, which is where I live. So I'm selfish. I've set up the server where it's lowest ping for me, but that means if you live somewhere like in India or Europe, then you're gonna have a higher ping. But this means that all players will always be able to join each other. If you don't have a fixed region, it'll automatically go to the closest relay server near you, and that can make it hard to find other players because you'll only be able to find players in that region. And by having it set to US West, if anyone joins online, they'll be able to find anyone else's room, and it doesn't matter what region they're in. Since I'm making a small game, I want all players to be able to find each other at all times, so I'm going to fix the region to US West. And Photon has a full region list online if you want to look at that and find the region closest to you. Alright, so to set up our scene, I'm going to start here by creating a canvas. And then I'm going to set it to scale with screen size and 1920 by 1080. I'm going to have it match the width and height with halfway between width and height so it matches on both axes. And I just set the reference resolution to my monitor's resolution so it's easier to work with. Now, let's see, what are we going to do next? I'm going to make a scripts folder. Great folder. Scripts. Now I'm going to make a new C# script and I'm going to call it launcher. And this is what we're going to use to connect to the Photon services, connect to their master server, which lets us find other games on the network and other players. And it's also going to launch our game, handle joining rooms, stuff like that, listing rooms. Now in our launcher class, I'm going to use the namespace photon.pun. Then I'm going to do mono behavior pun callbacks, which is going to give us access to some helpful callbacks we're going to need to connect to Photon servers. In my start method here, I'm going to do photon network.connect using settings. And this is going to connect to the Photon master server using the settings set up in our Photon server settings file that it generated here. So it's going to connect to the fixed region US West and it's going to establish a connection with the master server in United States West. So now what's happening when we launch the game is we're going to just connect to the server, but that's not all we need to do to start finding rooms or creating rooms. I'm going to make a public override void on connected to master. This is going to be called when we actually finally connect to the master server. And I'm going to do Photon network dot join lobby. Lobbies are basically where you find rooms, where you create rooms. You need to be in a lobby to find rooms or create rooms. So before we can really do anything with our game, we're going to need to join the lobby. So as soon as we connect to the master server, I'm just going to call the join lobby method so that we can connect to a lobby and start creating rooms. Now once we've connected to a lobby, which I can public override void on connected on join lobby. This will be called when we join the lobby. So I can actually put some debug log statements here telling us when we join the lobby. Join lobby. It's gonna help us debug. Joined master. And now if I go back into Unity and put our launcher script on our canvas, now when we run the game, we can see that it's connecting to the master server, it connected to the master, and then it joined the lobby. So now we're in a lobby, we can list rooms, we can create rooms, we can do everything we want to do with matchmaking and stuff like that. So I'm going to actually start setting up some of our menus here. I'm going to create an empty object. I'm going to call this loading menu. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and then double click on this in the bottom right, which is going to make it fill the screen. If I go into 2D mode, I can edit this menu here. This is going to be our loading menu telling us that we're joining the server, connecting to the server, connecting to the lobby, because if we don't have this and someone tries to create a room while we haven't connected to the master server yet, it's going to give us an error, and we don't want that. So I'm going to make a new text element here with Text Mesh Pro. Text Mesh Pro. Text Mesh Pro is just a better version of Unity's default text, and I use it for all my UI. It's easier to use, it's easier to, you can add effects to it and stuff. It's really nice, and it comes built into Unity. All I have to do is create a Text Mesh Pro asset to start the import. So I'm going to say loading, and you can't really see that against the skybox right now. I'm actually going to set our main camera to solid color and make it maybe gray just for now. I'm going to set this to, loading, increase the font size, increase this, 600 by 100 will probably fit our screen well. I'll make it in the middle. There we go, that's good enough for me. So now we have a loading menu here. And I'm also going to make another menu and call this title menu. And this is going to be where all the main, once you load in the game, you're going to be introduced to this menu. And this is where you get all your options. So I'm going to create an empty object here, set it to 600 by 0. This is going to be our button container. Our button container here. I'm going to add a vertical layout group component. Going to make the child expand on the width. I'm going to set the spacing to 10 so that there's spacing in between the buttons UI and then button Text Mesh Pro. And here's our button. I'm going to increase the height to 100. Nah, that's too big. 70. Take the button text, maybe make that up a bit, scale that up, 45, find room. So first button, I'll duplicate that with Control D, and this will be create room, and this third button can be quit game. These are the 3 buttons we're going to need for matchmaking, and Photon has a matchmaking interface which you can implement if you want, join random room. But what we're going to be doing here is just being able to create a room and then finding that room from a list. If you're working on a small indie game and you're just going to have small groups of people playing, you don't want people to get mixed up in rooms when they just want to play with their friends. So being able to create a room and having other people join it is really convenient, and matchmaking for a game this small isn't really necessary. So now we got to make it so that the title menu actually appears when we are done loading. So I'm actually gonna I like to be neat about this, because I love my UI, and this is all going to be temporary. Hopefully in the future we can redo all this to actually look pretty. And I'm going to build some infrastructure for our menu systems here. I'm going to make a MenuManager script, and this is going to control opening and closing the menus. So for our loading menu, I'm going to add a new script to it called menu, and we're going to add a menu script onto everything that we want to be able to come in and out as a menu. Now if we open our menu script, I'm going to delete these default methods and add in a new public void open and public void close. Alright, in close, I'm going to do GameObject.setActive false. It's going to disable our menu, and then open, I'm going to do GameObject.setActive true, which will enable it. Now, in our MenuManager script, I am going to make a serialized field, which is going to expose our variable to the inspector without making it public, because we don't really want it public. We don't need other classes accessing this field. I'm going to make a menu array of menus. And now if we go back into Unity, you'll see on our MenuManager we've got an array here. I'm going to make this array size 2, and I'm going to add a menu component to our title menu also. I'm going to add both these menus into the menu list, or menu array, and then in our menu I'm going to add another field, public string menu name. Alright, and this is going to allow us to open and close menus based on their name. I'm going to call this menu loading. I'm going to call this menu title. Now back in our MenuManager script here, make a new function, open menu string menu name, and then a public void open menu. And now I have two functions, each with different parameters. This first one is going to take a string and open a menu, and the second one is going to take a menu object, a menu script, and open a menu. And this makes it easier to assign references when you're editing in just having this button. If I just want this button to open, like the loading menu, I could make this. I could set MenuManager, open menu, and then I could drag in my loading menu, and that's really nice. But if we're trying to access the menus through scripts, like in our launcher class, we want to close the loading menu and open the title menu. We don't want to store a reference to the menu in every single class we want to access it, so we're just going to have a string key for our menus here. For now, I'm just going to loop through every menu in our menus. If menus.length, if menus i.menu name equals menu name that we are trying to open, then we can open menus I. And then in our menu script, I'm going to add another thing, another little thing here, another variable. I'm going to hide this from the inspector because I don't want to accidentally change this while I'm editing or anything. It's going to be a public bool open. And we're going to use this to figure out which menus are open or not. So in our open menu script here, I'm going to say menu.open equals true. Actually, we don't even need to do that. We can simplify this. In our menu script in open, we can set open equals true, and in close, we can set open equals false. That's nice. I always like to, if I'm working with a more complex system like this, I like to dedicate tasks on an object to a script on that object. So for our menu script here, I like to have everything controlled by this actual script. So the open variable and enabling and disabling it, I like to control it by this. And then if we want to change that later, it's really easy. Then our MenuManager, all we have to do is call menu.open. That's it. That'll open our menu. And now if we were to do this, it would work. We could open a menu, but we will also want to be able to close the menu. So here we're checking if the menu is the menu we want to open, and then we're opening it. But if it's not, and if the menu that we're checking right now is open, then we want to close it. And I'll make another function here for this. Alright. If we open a menu with this function, it's not going to close the one that we currently have open. So in order to do that, I'm going to say, I'm going to check everything, and if the menu is open, then we're going to close it, because we will only want to have one menu open at a time. In our MenuManager script, I want to make this actually a singleton, so that we can access it from anywhere in the game at any time. I'm going to make a new variable, public static MenuManager instance, and in our awake function, instance is going to be this. So here we're going to host a static reference, which means the variable is bound to the class, not the actual object in Unity. And this static reference is going to reference this script, which we have in our scene here. And in our launcher now, we're going to be able to do MenuManager.instance.openMenu title. So we don't have to have a reference to our MenuManager script to open a menu, and that's really nice to have. So now I'm going to set the title menu to be not active, so that our loading menu is active by default. And then if I play the game, once I've just noticed something. Okay, so the loading menu, you know what, we're actually going to have to do this. In our menu script, I'm going to have to make this public so that we can make sure the loading menu is set to open, because right now it's trying to close the menu that is open, and we don't have any menu that's open. So now that I've set it to open, when we start our game, once we've connected to everything, it's going to open the menu called title, and that's this menu with all our buttons here. Alright, we've done it. We made a MenuManager. And all that work is going to pay off later down the road when we have more menus here for like customizing and EXP, joining rooms and a room menu, and loading a room and stuff like that. That's going to pay off with our MenuManager here. Now that we've got this done, I think that the next step is actually creating a room and finding a room. But let's start with creating a room. I'm going to make a new menu called create room menu. I'm going to make that fill the screen. I'm going to disable the title menu here. And in our create room menu, I want to have an option for the name of the room, and I want to have a button to create it. So I'm going to make a new Text Mesh Pro input field. It's kind of small, it's a button size 600 by 70. We'll do that for our input field too. And then I want my text scale to match that, 45. Point size, 45. There we go. And then in our placeholder, I'm going to just set it to enter room name. Just so that you know what to type in there. Alright, now I'm going to take one of our buttons from here, paste it here, reset its anchor so it's in the center of the screen, and then lower it down, whatever, 100. It's probably, I'm going to do 80 so it has 10 pixel spacing because our button is 70 pixels tall. Alright, that's great. I'm going to rename this create room. Then our launcher script, I'm going to make a new public void create room. And then I'm also going to have import the namespace Text Mesh Pro so that we can use that. Serialize field. Oh, I messed it up. Serialize field. Text Mesh Pro input field room name input field. And then in our create room function, I'm just going to call Photon network.create room with this room name. And then I'm also going to say if string.is null or empty our room name, then we're just going to return. And this is to make sure that we actually enter a name for a room before we create one, so we don't just create a room with no name. If you actually enter this into the create room function, it's going to generate a random string of letters and numbers for your room. So if you don't ever want room names to be seen, you can just do that. But we're going to have our room names listed in a list that we can join later. So I want our room names to be customizable so that players can recognize which room their friends are in. So now that we've started creating a room here, it's going to take a second for Photon to actually contact the server telling it we want to create it, and then the server telling us that we've created and joined a room. So in order to stop players from clicking any other buttons there, I'm going to do MenuManager.instance.open menu loading. And then I'm going to make a new override void function here on joined room. And then we'll open up a room menu. And I'm going to make another on create room failed. And when we start to create a room, there are two callbacks that can be potentially called. We can either have successfully joined a room. On created room is also called, but on joined room is called when you join a room or you create a room. So we're just going to use that because all we're going to do is load the room menu. And then in on create room failed, that means we failed to create a room, and it's going to give us an error message here which we can display to the user. So once we've joined a room, I'm going to make a new menu here, create empty, put the screen, room menu. We'll actually add a menu component to this and call it create room. And then we can add that to our list of menus here. Now in our room menu, I want to have the room title at the top, and then maybe a list of players, but we'll get to that later, and a button at the bottom that allows us to leave the room. So UI, text, 45 is our font size for this project apparently. Set that down, 50. A little spacing on the sides, make it the center. I'm going to call it room name. I'm going to rename this text room name text. And honestly, I should probably go and rename all my buttons so that they're easy to tell what they're doing, what their actual purpose is. But we can do that once we actually assign what they do in the on-click event. Alright, so our room name text is there. I'm going to copy our button, put it at the bottom here. Maybe 80, it's got a little spacing, 50, 75. Doesn't really matter, I just want it to look clean. We'll probably redo this later, but that's fine. Now, in our button script, I'm going to just put leave room, because that's what we're doing here. And then we'll make a new function here, public override. Actually, no, not yet. Let's set up our joined room and on create room failed functions first. MenuManager.instance.open menu room, and we'll have to set this up. Room menu, add a menu component, call it room, go to our menu manager, add it as a menu. Alright, and in our on create room failed, we should have an error menu or something. So let's make it new, empty error menu, and I'll add a menu component. All we need here is some text and a button, so I'll just copy that from the room menu, disable that for now while we're at it. Work on the menu, error, text, we make that red, let them know that it's an error. I'm going to test to make sure that this wraps nicely. It doesn't, so I'm going to set that to the top alignment so it does wrap nicely. Alright, look at that. Works perfectly. So if we have an error like 20 lines long, we can actually read it. I'm going to rename this button to OK. Because that's all you really can do. You got an error. So let's go back on our script here. MenuManager.instance.open menu error. And then in here we should probably include a reference to the error text so that we can actually assign it a value. So when our room creation fails, we'll make the error text.text to room creation failed plus message. And I can make this button open up our title menu. No, that's wrong. What am I doing? Canvas. MenuManager, our master controlling class. Open menu. Wrong one. Open menu. Title. Great. So now if we run this, we can see that clicking the OK button returns us to the menu, but we haven't actually added it to our list here, so let's do that so that it closes itself. Alright, there's error, text, error, great, that's a little demo there. Error, text in here. Let's drag in our room name input field while we're at it. Also, let's set up some of our buttons here. In the title menu, let's say our create room button. Go to the canvas, call MenuManager, open menu, create room menu. Then in our create room menu, we're gonna have this button actually call launcher dot create room. Let's make our loading menu active again and see if this actually works. Alright. Gonna run the game. Create room. What is wrong? We accidentally called close menu. Okay, open menu. Okay, it's opening the menu finally. Here we go. Create room. Enter room name. Test. Create room, loading. Right, now we are in a room. That's great. Okay, so let's start off this part by actually setting our room name text to our room name. So in our launcher, I'm going to make a new reference to room name text. And then in onJoined room, we're going to set room name text.text equals Photon network dot current room name. Okay, there we go. It's a long line there, but it's going to give us the name of our room. And now if we start it up, create room, test, create room. I didn't assign it. Start it up. Create room, test, create room. There we go. That's the name of our room at the top there. Great. I'm so glad. And for our room menu, let's make this actually leave the room. We don't have a method for that yet. Alright. Public void leave room. Photon network dot leave room. And then we're gonna open the loading screen and public override void on left room. When we finally leave the room, we're going to open up the title menu. Alright. Now we can call launcher dot leave room. In our room menu. Create room, test, create room. There we go, it's at the top. Leave room, and we're back in our lobby. That's great. You know what? We'll leave it off here. That's the end of episode 1. Let's see. What did we do today? We made a menu manager. We imported Photon and got it so that we load in the menu and we are able to create a room and then leave the room and return to the menu. That's pretty good for 30 minutes of work. Bye bye. See you soon.